Hi, I'm Dr. Chad Larson. Thanks for joining me in another episode of Keep It Real. I've spoke many times before on the show about brain health. And really the reason is because I'm reading research papers all the time, and there's so much research that's being generated about brain health with particular attention to cognition and dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And so today, let's add a little bit more information to the story as we learn more about brain research and different things that we can do to decrease the chance of getting dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So there's a really recent study that was just published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. And so remember, when a journal has its own disease name, you know that disease is really important. So the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease just tells you that there's a lot of research. There's so much research that it could fill the pages of its own journal. They have that also for other major conditions like Journal of Diabetes and the Journal of heart disease. And so Alzheimer's disease is a really important topic, and there's lots of research that's being conducted in that field. And so there's a really interesting study on the effects of blood flow to the brain, and a particular substance, which I'll get to in just a moment, that increases blood flow to the part of the brain where our memory center lies. Remember, memory is a complex thing that happens in the brain that's associated with multiple parts of the brain, but a really key part is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is involved particularly in our short-term memory, and it's also one of the first things that start to degenerate when there's cognitive issues and Alzheimer's. So in other words, neurodegeneration. When the brain starts to neurodegenerate, the hippocampus is oftentimes one of the first things that goes. So they did an interesting study where they evaluated individuals who have cognitive issues, and what they did is they evaluated their levels of EPA and DHA. EPA is eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA is docosahexaenoic acid. And EPA and DHA are the main constituents in fish oil. And so fish oil is very high in this EPA and DHA. So they measured these particular components in the person's blood, and then they also evaluated perfusion to certain areas of the brain. And perfusion is just how the blood flows to the certain parts of the brain. And they looked at specific regions that are associated with Alzheimer's, dementia, and things like memory. And so what they found out, just to summarize, is that the subjects who had greater blood flow to the parts of the brain where memory is involved, like particularly the hippocampus. They looked at a particular part of the hippocampus, and people who had higher blood levels of EPA and DHA had greater perfusion or blood flow to that part of the brain. And that also extrapolated into decreased amount of cognitive loss. So in other words, they had greater cognition. The subjects who had greater cognition had more EPA and DHA in their blood, and they had greater amount of perfusion to those memory centers like the hippocampus. So the summary is that the more EPA and DHA you have, the better blood flow that you will have to the brain, and the decreased chance that you're going to develop cognitive issues like Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration. So this is just one component. As we're understanding more about dementia and Alzheimer's, we're understanding that it's really a multifactorial approach that we need to take to help somebody with decreasing the chance of Alzheimer's, or if they have it, to help unwind it. Like the information that we have cited in past episodes about the work by Dale Bredesen, and he's got a multi-pronged approach to help reverse and prevent Alzheimer's disease. But this was an interesting study because they just picked on, one particular treatment component. And just in that one component, there's a significant change in the brain. And so why is this? EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, is it does a couple things. One thing that's really key is it's a major building block for your body's natural anti-inflammatory system. EPA is a building block for prostaglandin 3, PG3, and so when you have more EPA as kind of a building block for your prostaglandin 3, you're just going to have more anti-inflammation. And like we've talked about in past episodes, things like dementia and neurodegeneration is largely an inflammatory issue, because most people live certain lifestyles and eat certain foods that are more pro-inflammatory, so they're going to expedite that degeneration. But if we do things that incorporate more anti-inflammation, then we could really help to stay ahead of this kind of neuroinflammation and then leading to neurodegeneration. So EPA does that. Also, omega-3 fish oils that you can get from fish, or you can get from certain fish oil supplements, also create kind of a blood thinning effect. And so by having a little bit of a blood thinning effect, the blood can flow easier through the blood vessels. And then you add the idea that the EPA is anti-inflammatory. That's a really good combination. And then the DHA, the docosahexaenoic acid, DHA is really the main fatty acid in the brain. So DHA is really like brain food. It just helps to add, remember, most of the nervous system, all of your body, including your brain, is made up mostly of fatty acids. And so DHA is one of these fatty acids that's all over in the brain. So it certainly makes sense that EPA, that a higher amount of EPA and DHA really helps to preserve proper brain function, particularly in the areas of the brain like the hippocampus that's associated with memory. So I hope that helps. Hope you learned something. Eat some fish today, particularly the oily fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, that kind of thing is really high in this omega-3. If you can't get to having some fish today, then take your fish oils. There's lots of companies that make high quality fish oils. Make sure that you're getting it from a high quality source if you're taking it in a supplement form. And take those fish oil, get enough EPA, DHA, preserve your brain, and decrease the chance that you're going to have dementia in the future. So have a happy brain, and hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next time. Until then, keep it real.